Seattle declared a state of emergency on homelessness in 2015, and the situation, the conditions people experiencing homelessness in Seattle have really, it seems, have only gotten worse since. The state of emergency was declared 10 years after a 10-year plan was created that didn't successfully end homelessness in Seattle. The numbers have continued to increase, and while there has been an increased response, and there really does seem to be more of a community maybe awareness and activity that's occurring at this moment. Historically, the experiences of people who are living on the streets have been of banishment, have been a criminalization. They've experienced mass displacements, and in general have very, very low amount of spaces that they can access. Half of King County's unsheltered population are living in vehicles, are living in larger vehicles such as an RV or a school bus. Particularly for people who are living in vehicles, are very, very few spaces. Because of that historically low lack of response, there really is no other place for people but to park on the streets, where they experience mass tickets, mass tows, and continual sort of risk of harm.
This is where I used to live. I was priced out of my apartment in downtown Seattle in 2015, the year the homelessness crisis was announced and made an emergency here. I became a statistic. I bought a motorhome with the last of my money, and due to a lack of parking spaces, thanks to the 10-year rule, where vehicles older than 10 years can't live in a mobile home park, I ended up occupying my vehicle in public space. And this RV at the far end of the row is where I used to live. That is a public-private easement that does not belong to the city. It belongs to that building. So I spoke to the property owner and got permission to stay. 3.5 years later, the stability is what got me able to go inside. Being able to stay in one place for an extended period of time was what was necessary to stabilize my life and allow me to pull myself, with the aid of my community, out of a very bad, long 7 years of drama and suffering and survival.
There is considerable hostile architecture that's being installed in cities across the United States, and particularly in Seattle. And it comes in a lot of different ways. And more recently, they've been installing these large concrete barricades. And the concrete barricades, I think, are another example of a hostile architecture. It's a little bit maybe different than what we're familiar with, because a lot of times when we think about hostile architecture, it's very intentionally built as removing a person from public space, but in a way that might be sort of hidden.
They're sometimes called eco-blocks, but these are concrete barricades that have been used to banish people from public spaces. This is a public parking space. It is illegal to install this block here because it makes it so that any person, any member of the public cannot park here. These barricades, the Department of Transportation in Seattle has said that yes, they are illegal. I think, Jean, you were saying that they had
I was saying these are installed by private companies and individuals with the city turning their head the other way. Mm-hmm. It's a $2,000 fine per block. That is money we could be using for something else if we were enforcing the use, the misuse of public space. Mm-hmm. But they would rather block undesirables, quote unquote, from parking than actually give them the help they need through funding initiatives like fines or penalties for bad behavior.
Where did they go? We don't know. They probably went to the outskirts. They may have been moved out of Seattle. They may have had their vehicles impounded. If they had their vehicle impounded, the cost to get those out, first off, the cost of the impound can be several $100s, and then that can be several $100s a day for storage. So for people who are already vulnerable and on low or limited or no incomes, that can be a prohibitive fee to be able to retrieve their valuable shelter, let alone their property that's within that shelter. We should not assume that the lack of visibility of people experiencing homelessness in Seattle means the lack of people experiencing homelessness in Seattle. Human beings are being displaced from public space by law enforcement, and that is creating the illusion that the number of people has been reduced, when that simply, I do not believe is so. We need to recognize and respect the property value that this person has invested into their home, that our own biases around what we think homelessness is may be a barrier to a person who's living in an RV getting stable space. That we need to meet people where they're at, and we need to respect the investment, the personal and economic investment that they put into their shelter. By limiting people's access to private property ownership and the long-term value and investment and profit and political enfranchisement that comes with that private property ownership, that's how people are continually criminalized and made into second-class citizens in this country. That's what we're seeing reproduced into people experiencing homelessness right now.
We have to get away from viewing property and places to live as a way to make money off of someone. This is a human right. We have to change our way of thinking. We can build all the affordable housing in the world, but if we refuse to let someone live there because they don't meet the criteria for a bank account, then again, we're harming people. These are basic human rights issues. It goes with housing. It goes with healthcare. We know already that if we could interrupt some of the childhood abuse and start when people are young, it would lead to a serious reduction in chronic homelessness in adults. These issues are interconnected. We have to take care of people now.
You know, I think we need to constantly be breaking down those barriers that are trying to separate us, right? And I think that my work with vehicle residents, that's primarily what I focus on, we have seen so much growth actually around that and hope over the past several years. The numbers haven't gone down, the numbers of people experiencing homelessness, let alone people living in vehicles. But there is more of a response now. We are actually seeing a more innovative response. In Seattle, there's been a history, challenges of actually developing parking spaces for people living in vehicles. Those parking spaces have tended to be overnight only. They tended to be for people only in smaller vehicles. That's changing. So we're now starting to see the development of RV lots, of larger vehicle spaces, places that are not just overnight only, but are 24/7. We're even starting to see conversations, which is, we'll see how far they go. It's exciting at least to hear them for the first time, about things like subsidized mobile home parks, about things like temporary amenity sites, like similar to a rest stop where somebody could get access to a septic dump, water, electricity, or even vehicle maintenance, or an extreme weather site where they could go inside out of their RV when it's hot or smoky or when it's freezing. None of these things currently exist in Seattle, and we're finally actually starting to have conversations about those. I find that very, very hopeful.
If you are experiencing homelessness right now, if you are going through this, you are not forgotten. I felt left behind and forgotten and thrown away. I felt like trash. And I didn't realize that there was a huge organization, several organizations of people who had gone through it, who were fighting every single day. While they may not know you personally, you are on their mind. They are thinking about you. When it rains, I'm wondering and hoping that you will be dry. When it is cold, I worry about whether you're staying warm enough. And we are doing everything in our power to fix this. You are loved and you are worth more than this. And we know this, and we will continue to fight for it.